My name is Joanne Parker, 62 years old. I've lived in my modest two-bedroom house for over 40 years. It holds every memory I cherish. My late husband Robert's laughter, my son Michael growing up countless holiday gatherings. So when my new daughter-in-law Bethany showed up 3 weeks after their wedding with a notary and eviction papers saying, "We've just sold this house, you're going to a nursing home," I was stunned, but something felt wrong. I smiled and said, "Perfect. Let's stop at the police station first. They're very interested in those forged documents you've been creating." I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Please like and subscribe to hear how I uncovered Bethany's shocking scheme and what the police found that sent her running scared. I met my husband Robert when we were both just 20 years old, working summer jobs at the local hardware store. He was stocking shelves, and I was the cashier. Every chance he got, Robert would bring items to the front just to chat with me. By the end of that summer, we were inseparable. We married the following spring in a small ceremony at my parents' church, surrounded by family and friends who believed as we did that we were perfect for each other. We were young and broke, but determined to build a good life. Robert worked construction while attending night classes for his associate's degree in business. I took a job as a secretary at an insurance office, steadily working my way up to office manager over the years. We saved every penny living in a tiny apartment until we could afford a down payment on a real home of our own. I'll never forget the day we got the keys to our house on Maple Street. It wasn't fancy, a modest two-bedroom with faded wallpaper and worn carpets, but it was ours. We spent weekends painting walls, replacing fixtures, and slowly transforming it into the warm, comfortable home we'd dreamed of. Robert planted a garden in the backyard, saying he wanted to watch things grow alongside our life together. The maple tree out front became the backdrop for countless family photos as the years passed. When our son Michael came along 7 years into our marriage, our little house became truly complete. I can still picture Robert carrying baby Michael through each room, proudly showing him his kingdom, as Robert jokingly called it. We converted the smaller bedroom into a nursery, painting clouds on the ceiling and animals on the walls. As Michael grew, the house evolved with him, from baby gates on the stairs to height markers penciled on the kitchen doorframe, from toy cars scattered across the living room to science projects on the dining table. Our home witnessed everything: birthday parties and Christmas mornings, Michael's first steps and first lost tooth homework struggles and teenage arguments, graduation celebrations, and quiet empty nest adjustments when Michael left for college. Through it all, Robert and I grew deeper in love, settling into the comfortable rhythms of a shared life well lived. When Robert was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, our home became our sanctuary. During his final year, we transformed the living room into his bedroom so he could look out at his garden. Friends and family gathered there, keeping us company through those difficult months. After he passed away 5 years ago, I found comfort in staying in the house where I could feel his presence in every corner. By then, the mortgage was fully paid off. Our final payment had been a celebration just 2 years before Robert's diagnosis. He had been so proud that day, telling me, "No matter what happens, Joe, you'll always have a roof over your head. This house is your security." His foresight turned out to be one of his greatest gifts to me. Without a mortgage payment, I could manage comfortably on my retirement savings and small pension. After Robert's passing, Michael became even more attentive. At 32, he had established himself as a successful accountant at a respected firm downtown. He wasn't married yet, but had been in several healthy relationships that simply hadn't led to the one. Every Sunday, he would come for dinner, often staying to help with home repairs or just to keep me company. He worried about me living alone, especially after I developed some minor heart problems requiring daily medication, but respected that I wanted to stay independent. "This house is filled with your father," I told him once when he suggested I consider a smaller place. "I can't imagine living anywhere else." My life settled into pleasant routines. I volunteered at the local library 3 mornings a week, joined a book club, and remained active in our church community. My neighbors kept an eye out for me, and I for them. Grace Wilson, my best friend since Robert and I moved onto the block, lived just 3 houses down. We shared coffee on our porches most mornings, comparing notes on our gardens and grandchildren. I had a good life, not without grief, but full of purpose and connection. I had plans for aging in place, researching modifications I could make to the house as I got older. Robert had always been practical, installing grab bars in the bathroom even before we needed them. Planning ahead, he called it. Then Michael met Bethany, and everything changed. The first time I met her was at Rossini's, a local Italian restaurant Michael had chosen for the occasion. I arrived early, nervous and excited to meet the woman who had captured my son's attention. Michael had been unusually secretive about this relationship, only telling me after they'd been dating for several weeks. Bethany arrived wearing a tight black dress with stiletto heels and more jewelry than seemed appropriate for a casual dinner. She was undeniably beautiful, with long blonde hair and perfect makeup. But something about her smile didn't quite reach her eyes when she greeted me. "Mrs. Parker, finally," she air-kissed near my cheeks. "Michael talks about you constantly. I feel like I already know all about you and that cute little house you've lived in forever." "Please call me Joanne," I said, noticing how she'd emphasized little house in a way that sounded almost dismissive. Throughout dinner, Bethany dominated the conversation, talking about luxury brands I'd never heard of and vacations to places I'd never been. When I tried to ask about her family or background, she skillfully redirected the conversation. "Enough about boring me," she'd say with a practiced laugh. "Tell me more about your house. Michael says it's in one of those charming established neighborhoods that are just so valuable now." By the end of the evening, I realized she'd learned everything about me and my financial situation, while I knew almost nothing substantive about her. As Michael walked me to my car, I tried to express my concerns gently. "She seems enthusiastic," I said carefully. "Isn't she great?" Michael beamed. "She's just nervous meeting you. She knows how important you are to me." I wanted to believe him. I wanted my son to be happy. So I pushed aside my reservations and decided to give Bethany the benefit of the doubt. It was a decision I would soon regret. Michael and Bethany's romance progressed at a pace that left me dizzy. They'd met at the offices of one of Michael's clients where she worked as a receptionist. According to Michael, it was love at first sight, a concept that seemed unlike my practical, thoughtful son. Within weeks, he was spending every free moment with her, canceling our standing Sunday dinners more often than not. "She's just so special, Mom," he would say, when I expressed concern about how quickly things were moving. "When you know, you know." But did he really know her, I wondered. Michael had always been deliberate in relationships, taking time to ensure compatibility before making commitments. This whirlwind romance seemed completely out of character. Just 3 months after they began dating, Michael announced their engagement over the phone rather than in person. I was stunned, but tried to sound supportive. "I know it seems fast," he said, anticipating my concerns, "but sometimes life gives you opportunities you have to grab. Bethany is that opportunity for me." It sounded rehearsed, like words someone else had put in his mouth. The first time Bethany visited my home, her behavior set off even more alarm bells. Instead of admiring family photos or asking about sentimental items, she seemed to be assessing the property. She walked through rooms, measuring with her eyes, commenting on the potential of the space, and asking pointed questions about the value of homes in the neighborhood. "The market is just so hot right now," she remarked, running her hand along my kitchen counter. "Especially for original homes like this that haven't been updated in decades. Investors just snap them up." I noticed how she opened closets without asking, peeked into my medication cabinet in the bathroom, and seemed particularly interested in the deed and insurance papers visible on my desk. "Do you own this place outright?" she asked casually. "Or still making mortgage payments?" "It's paid off," I answered, uncomfortable with her directness. "Robert and I made our final payment about 7 years ago." "Smart," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So many seniors are house-rich but cash-poor. It really limits their options." Throughout the visit, she also made subtle inquiries about my health, asking about my doctor's medications and whether I'd had any cognitive assessments lately. They're just so important for seniors. Each question seemed innocent enough on its own, but together they formed a disturbing pattern. More concerning was how Michael changed in her presence. My thoughtful, considerate son became withdrawn, deferring to Bethany on every subject. When I mentioned our tradition of planting Robert's favorite sunflowers on his birthday, Bethany quickly interjected. "Michael will be busy that weekend. We're looking at potential honeymoon destinations. She placed her hand possessively on his arm, and he nodded agreement without meeting my eyes. As wedding plans commenced, I found myself systematically excluded. The venue was chosen without my input. When I offered to help address invitations, Bethany explained they were handling everything digitally to save the environment. When I asked about the mother of the groom dress, she informed me they were going non-traditional, and I should just wear something appropriate for your age. My best friend Grace was the first to voice what I'd been fearing. We were sitting on her porch one afternoon when she asked bluntly, "Have you looked into this woman's background at all?" "Michael seems certain about her," I replied weakly. "Michael seems like he's under some kind of spell," Grace countered. "This isn't like him, Joe, and the way she keeps asking about your house and your health, something's not right." Grace's nephew worked at a local law firm, and she offered to have him run a background check on Bethany, but I declined. It felt like a betrayal of Michael's trust, though I was growing more uneasy by the day. My concerns escalated when I overheard a phone conversation while dropping off some old family recipes Michael had requested. Bethany was in the backyard of their apartment thinking she was alone. "It's all proceeding as planned," she said in a tone I'd never heard from her before, cold calculating. "The house situation will be handled after we're married. The old lady has no clue. Yes, I've documented everything. Once I'm legally family, it'll be simple. Michael trusts me completely." My hands shook as I quietly left without making my presence known. That evening I called Michael and tried to broach the subject carefully. "Honey, I know you love Bethany, but don't you think everything is moving very quickly? Marriage is a huge step, and sometimes people aren't exactly who they present themselves to be." "What are you implying?" His voice went cold in a way I'd never heard before. "Nothing specific. I just want you to be sure. Maybe slow things down a bit. Take more time to get to know each other's families." I hesitated, then added, "I've noticed Bethany doesn't talk much about her family. Will they be at the wedding?" "Her parents aren't in the picture. It's a painful subject for her, and I'd appreciate if you wouldn't bring it up," he replied tensely. "I know this is an adjustment period for you, Mom, but Bethany is going to be my wife. I need you to accept that." The wedding itself was a small affair at the courthouse, with only a handful of guests, mostly Michael's friends and colleagues. Bethany's sole family representative was a cousin who stayed briefly and spoke to no one. I wore the blue dress I'd bought for the occasion and tried to embrace my new daughter-in-law with genuine warmth, though my heart was heavy with unspoken fears. "Welcome to the family," I said, hugging her. "Thanks," she replied with that same smile that never reached her eyes. "I can't wait for all of us to get settled." Something in the way she emphasized that last word sent a chill through me, but I pushed the feeling aside and focused on supporting my son on his wedding day. Little did I know that settled had a very specific meaning in Bethany's plans, one that would reveal itself all too soon. The confrontation came exactly 3 weeks after Michael and Bethany returned from their short honeymoon in Florida. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was tending to Robert's garden when a sleek black car pulled into my driveway. Michael stepped out from the passenger side looking uncomfortable. Bethany emerged from the driver's seat wearing a business suit and heels, her face set in determination. A third person, a nervous-looking man carrying a briefcase, exited from the back seat. "Mom, we need to talk," Michael said as I met them at the door soil still on my gardening gloves. Something about his tone and the stranger's presence made me uneasy, but I invited them in, offering tea, which Bethany declined for everyone with a wave of her hand. "This is Mr. Watkins," she said, gesturing to the nervous man. "He's a notary public. We have some papers for you to sign." "Papers?" I asked, looking to Michael, who avoided my gaze. "Yes," Bethany continued, her voice clipped and professional. "Given your recent health issues, Michael and I have made arrangements for your care going forward." "My health issues? You mean my controlled blood pressure?" I was baffled. "I don't need special care arrangements." Bethany's smile was cold as she pulled documents from her designer handbag. "Mrs. Parker, Joanne, let's be honest here. You're living alone in a house that's becoming too much for you to maintain. The stairs are a hazard. The garden is overwhelming you. It's time for a more appropriate living situation." "What are you talking about?" I turned to Michael. "What is going on?" Michael shifted uncomfortably but finally spoke. "Mom, we're worried about you. We think, that is, Bethany found a nice place where you'll have people to look after you." "A nice place," I repeated. Bethany laid a glossy brochure on my coffee table. "Sunny Pines Senior Living. They have an opening for immediate occupancy." I recognized the name, a nursing facility on the outskirts of town with a terrible reputation. There had been news reports about neglect and understaffing. "I have no intention of moving to Sunny Pines or anywhere else," I said firmly. "This is my home." "Actually," Bethany's voice took on a triumphant edge, "this house has been sold." She slid another document across the table. It was a sale agreement for my house to a company called Premier Properties, LLC. "That's impossible," I said, my heart beginning to race. "I never put this house on the market." "You authorized Michael to act on your behalf," Bethany countered, producing another document, a power of attorney form with what appeared to be my signature at the bottom. "And as your son's wife, I'm now involved in family decisions." I stared at the signature. It looked like mine, but I had never signed such a document. The realization of what was happening hit me like a physical blow. "This is a forgery," I said, my voice shaking with anger and fear. "Mr. Watkins is here to notarize the final transfer documents," Bethany continued as if I hadn't spoken. "Once that's complete, the new owners have generously granted you 30 days to vacate." She pulled out more papers, eviction notices, and placed them on the table with a flourish. "Michael." I looked at my son in shock. "You're allowing this?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Mom, it's for the best. The sale proceeds will pay for years of care at Sunny Pines. You won't have to worry about anything." Except I never agreed to sell my home, and I certainly never gave anyone power of attorney. My voice rose as the magnitude of their betrayal became clear. Bethany's mask of professionalism slipped, revealing a flash of cruelty. "Let's not make this difficult. At your age, with your medical history, who do you think people will believe, a confused old woman or her concerned son and daughter-in-law?" "Medical history, I take blood pressure medication." I was nearly shouting now. "Your increasing memory issues and confusion have been documented," Bethany said smoothly, pulling out what appeared to be medical reports. "We have records of cognitive decline dating back months." More forgeries. I felt sick to my stomach as I realized the extent of their scheme. I looked at the notary, who was shifting uncomfortably, clearly sensing something was wrong. For a moment, despair threatened to overwhelm me. Then I remembered the conversation I'd overheard, the careful questions about my finances, the way Bethany had systematically isolated Michael from me. This wasn't happening by chance. It was calculated elder fraud. I took a deep breath and found my voice. "Mr. Watkins, before you notarize anything, you should know that the police are currently investigating multiple cases of forged documents connected to Premier Properties. In fact, if we're going to sign papers today, I suggest we all take a trip to the police station first. Detective Martin is very interested in these forged power of attorney documents." It was a bluff. There was no Detective Martin, no ongoing investigation that I knew of, but the effect was immediate. The notary closed his briefcase with a snap. "I think I should leave," he said, heading for the door. "I don't want to be involved in anything questionable." Bethany's face contorted with rage. "You can't back out now. We had an agreement." The notary practically ran to his car while Bethany turned her fury on me. "This changes nothing," she hissed. "The sale is already in process. You'll be out of this house one way or another." "Get out," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Get out of my house now, or I really will call the police." She stormed out, calling for Michael to follow. To my surprise, he hesitated. "Michael," I said, fighting tears, "please don't do this. This isn't you." He looked torn, glancing between his new wife waiting in the car and me standing in the doorway of the home where he'd grown up. "I need to think," he said finally. "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know what's happening anymore." As they drove away, I closed and locked my door with shaking hands, then collapsed onto the sofa, the fraudulent papers still scattered across my coffee table. The magnitude of what had just happened, what had almost happened, hit me full force. My son and his new wife had just tried to steal my home and force me into a nursing facility, and they might have succeeded if I hadn't followed my instincts. I needed help, and I needed it fast. The moment Bethany's car disappeared down the street, I called Grace. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial the number. "They tried to steal my house," I gasped when she answered, my voice breaking. "Bethany brought a notary and forged documents. They were going to force me into Sunny Pines." "I'm coming over right now," Grace said without hesitation, "and I'm bringing Jeffrey." Her nephew was the lawyer she'd previously offered to consult. While waiting for them, I gathered all the papers Bethany had left behind, placing them carefully in a folder. I also found recent mail, bills, bank statements, medical records, anything that might help establish that I was competent and in control of my affairs. Grace arrived within 15 minutes, with Jeffrey, a serious young man in a suit, who immediately took charge of the situation. "This is elder fraud, Mrs. Parker," he said after examining the documents. "These signatures are clearly forgeries. The good news is you caught it before anything was finalized." "What do we do now?" I asked. "First we call the police. This is criminal activity. Then we file for an emergency injunction to block any attempted property transfer. I'll help you with both." Jeffrey made the calls while Grace made tea and sat with me, her presence steadying as my world tilted on its axis. The betrayal was almost too much to comprehend, not just from Bethany, whom I'd never fully trusted, but from Michael, my only child. Detective Lisa Morales arrived within the hour, a compact woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She examined the documents, took photos, and listened carefully to my account of events. "Unfortunately, we see cases like this more often than you'd think," she said. "Predatory individuals targeting seniors for their assets, often using family members as unwitting accomplices." "Michael isn't unwitting," Grace interjected. "He was right here with her." "We'll need to investigate everyone's role," Detective Morales agreed. "But in my experience, these situations often involve manipulation and isolation of family members, too." She took detailed notes about Bethany, her sudden appearance in Michael's life, the whirlwind romance, the wedding with minimal family present. "Do you know her maiden name or anything about her background?" the detective asked. I realized with a start that I knew almost nothing concrete about my daughter-in-law. Just that she worked as a receptionist at Carrington Investments, where Michael has clients. She said her parents weren't in the picture. "We'll start there," Detective Morales promised. "In the meantime, don't sign anything. Don't let anyone into your house without verifying their identity, and call immediately if either of them returns." After she left, Jeffrey helped me file for the emergency injunction and suggested additional steps to protect myself. "We should change your locks today," he advised, "and I'd recommend staying with someone for a few days if possible." "She can stay with me," Grace offered immediately. I nodded gratefully, but felt a wave of anger rising beneath my fear. "This is my home. I won't be driven from it." "Just for a few days," Jeffrey urged, "until we have legal protections in place." While we were making these arrangements, my phone rang. It was Michael. "Mom?" His voice sounded strained. "Are you okay?" "Am I okay?" I repeated incredulously. "You and your wife just tried to steal my home and force me into a nursing home. No, Michael, I am not okay." "I need to explain," he said. "Not over the phone. Can I come see you alone?" "Bethany doesn't know I'm calling." I looked at Grace and Jeffrey, who both shook their heads. "I don't think that's a good idea right now," I said, my heart breaking even as I spoke the words. "The police are involved, Michael. This isn't something we can just talk out." "Police?" His voice cracked. "Mom, please, you don't understand. I never meant for this to happen. Bethany said we were just helping you downsize. The papers were supposed to be legitimate. Did you actually believe that after everything your father and I taught you?" There was a long pause. "I don't know what to believe anymore," he finally said, "but I know I need to make this right." "Then tell the truth to the police," I said firmly. "All of it." After hanging up, I sat in silence while Grace and Jeffrey exchanged worried glances. "Do you think he's being honest?" Grace asked gently. "I don't know," I admitted. The Michael I raised would never have been part of something like this. But the Michael I saw today is someone I don't recognize. The next few days were a blur of police statements, legal filings, and shocking discoveries. Detective Morales called to inform me that Bethany Collins had previously been known as Elizabeth Conway and Amanda Blackburn. Under these various names, she had married at least 2 other men with assets, manipulated them into transferring property, then disappeared. "She's very good at what she does," Detective Morales explained. "She identifies vulnerable targets, usually lonely men with assets or connections to older relatives with property. She creates whirlwind romances that rush to marriage, then isolates them from friends and family." Even more disturbing was the discovery that Bethany had been researching how to declare someone incompetent and force guardianship proceedings. Police found evidence on Michael's computer of searches for how to claim diminished capacity and involuntary commitment of elderly parents. But the most chilling discovery came when Detective Morales asked me to bring in my medication for testing. The pills I thought were controlling my blood pressure turned out to be sugar substitutes in my prescription bottle. "She's been replacing your medication," the detective explained grimly, "likely hoping to provoke a health crisis that would support claims of your inability to care for yourself." I felt physically ill at the realization. If she had succeeded, I could have suffered a stroke or worse. Meanwhile, Grace organized neighbors to keep watch on my house after a suspicious car was spotted parked outside several times. Jeffrey secured a temporary restraining order against Bethany, and the notary came forward to admit he'd been pressured and hadn't properly verified identifications. Through it all, I vacillated between rage at the betrayal and heartbreak over potentially losing my relationship with my son. The house that had always been my sanctuary now felt violated, every room tainted by the memory of that confrontation. But beneath the pain, a determination was growing. I would not be a victim. I would fight back. Not just for myself, but for anyone else Bethany might target in the future. I might be 62, but I was far from helpless. And I was just getting started. The legal process moved both painfully slowly and dizzyingly fast in the weeks that followed. Jeffrey, now officially my attorney, filed for emergency injunctions against any property transfer and submitted evidence of the forged documents to the court. A judge granted a temporary freeze on any transactions related to my property within days. Meanwhile, Bethany launched a counterattack. Through her attorney, she filed documents claiming I had diminished capacity and that Michael, as my only child, should be granted guardianship of my affairs for my own protection. The court ordered a comprehensive medical and psychological evaluation to determine my competency. I underwent extensive testing with both court-appointed experts and independent specialists Jeffrey arranged. The results were unequivocal. I was fully competent, showed no signs of cognitive decline, and was perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. The judge dismissed Bethany's petition and issued a strongly worded rebuke of her tactics. The court finds these allegations of incompetence not only unfounded, but potentially malicious, Judge Henderson stated. The evidence suggests an attempt to exploit a senior citizen rather than protect one. Detective Morales continued her investigation, uncovering layers of Bethany's scheme. The company purchasing my house, Premier Properties, was owned by her uncle Gerald Conway, who had been involved in similar fraudulent real estate deals in 2 other states. They had already listed my house for sale online before attempting to get the final signatures advertising it as coming soon at nearly twice its market value. Most shocking to me was discovering that Bethany had been planning this for months. She had specifically targeted Michael after learning he had a widowed mother who owned her home outright. Their chance meeting at his client's office had been carefully orchestrated. The preliminary hearing for the criminal case was set for 6 weeks out. As it approached, Michael finally requested a meeting through his new attorney. He had separated from Bethany and moved in with a college friend. After consulting with Jeffrey and Detective Morales, I agreed to meet Michael at the police station with our lawyers present. Nothing could have prepared me for the shock of seeing him. My son, always so put together, looked haggard and much older than his 32 years. His eyes were red-rimmed, his shoulders slumped with defeat. "Mom," he began, voice breaking, "I don't even know where to start." "The truth would be good," I said, working to keep my voice steady. "All of it." Over the next 2 hours, Michael detailed how Bethany had systematically manipulated him from their first meeting, how she'd initially presented herself as caring and supportive, then gradually isolated him from friends and family, how she'd convinced him I was declining cognitively, showing him edited videos where my words were taken out of context to make me appear confused. She had an answer for everything, he explained, tears streaming down his face. When I'd question something, she'd turn it around to make me feel guilty or paranoid. She convinced me that moving you to assisted living was an act of love, that the house was just a burden on you. I swear, Mom, I never saw the forged documents before that day. When you called them out, it was like waking from a trance. But you stood there, I said, the pain still raw. You stood there while she threatened me. I know, he whispered. I have no excuse. I failed you completely. His testimony proved invaluable to the case. Michael provided access to emails, text messages, and financial records showing how Bethany had assumed control of his accounts, isolated him from friends, and planted seeds of doubt about my mental capacity. As the court date approached, I felt increasingly anxious about facing Bethany again. Grace stayed with me most nights, and neighbors created an informal watch system, checking in regularly and reporting any unusual activity. Despite these precautions, Bethany showed up at my door one evening when I was alone. I heard the car pull up and peeked through the curtains to see her emerging from a taxi. Instead of answering her insistent knocking, I called 911 and then Grace, who lived just down the street. Through the door, Bethany's voice shifted from falsely sweet to menacing. You think you've won, don't you? You have no idea who you're dealing with. When I'm finished, you'll wish you'd just signed those papers. Open this door, you stupid old woman. Mrs. Peterson, my neighbor across the street, had heard the commotion and began recording on her phone from her porch. Bethany, unaware she was being filmed, continued her tirade, threatening everything from physical harm to fabricating evidence of abuse. Police arrived within minutes, arresting Bethany for violating the restraining order. The video Mrs. Peterson captured provided even more evidence of Bethany's true character and intentions. The day of the trial, the courthouse was packed. Several local news outlets had picked up the story, framing it as a cautionary tale about elder fraud. I sat at the front with Jeffrey beside me, Grace directly behind, offering silent support. Michael sat on the prosecution side as well, separate from me, but part of the case against his wife. Facing Bethany across the courtroom was one of the hardest things I've ever done. She had transformed again, wearing a conservative dress and minimal makeup, projecting an image of a misunderstood young woman caught in circumstances beyond her control. The prosecutor, Sarah Mitchell, methodically presented the case. The forged documents, the attempted property theft, the evidence of similar schemes in other states, and the tampering with my medication. Witness after witness testified to Bethany's manipulative behavior and deliberate targeting of vulnerable individuals. When it was my turn to provide a victim impact statement, I rose on shaky legs and faced the judge. Your Honor, the home Bethany tried to steal isn't just property to me. It's where I raised my son, where my husband took his last breath, where every corner holds memories that can't be priced or replaced. But this case isn't just about a house. It's about dignity. It's about the right of seniors to live independently, without fear of exploitation, often by those they should be able to trust most. I turned slightly to look directly at Bethany. What you attempted to take from me wasn't just walls and a roof. It was my autonomy, my sense of safety, my trust in my own child. Those are damages that no court judgment can fully repair. When the verdict came, it was decisive. Bethany was found guilty on multiple counts, including attempted fraud, elder exploitation forgery, and identity theft. Her uncle faced similar charges in a separate case. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in prison, citing the calculated and callous nature of the crimes. As they led Bethany away, she turned to glare at me one last time. In her eyes, I saw not remorse, but fury at being caught. A chill ran through me as I realized how close she had come to succeeding. Michael sat with his head bowed, his own legal fate still uncertain. As a cooperative witness who had been manipulated himself, he avoided criminal charges, but still faced potential civil liability. More importantly, he faced the much longer process of rebuilding trust, with me, with himself, and with anyone else in his life. Justice had been served in the legal sense, but the emotional aftermath was just beginning. 1 year after Bethany's conviction, I sat in my garden watching butterflies flit between the zinnias and marigolds. The garden looked different now. I'd simplified some areas and added raised beds that were easier to maintain. But it was still Robert's garden at heart, still the peaceful space where I felt closest to him. What would you make of all this? I sometimes asked his memory as I worked the soil. How would you have handled it? I like to think he would have been proud of my resilience, though heartbroken by the circumstances that required it. The house, too, had undergone changes. After the attempted theft, I'd invested in a security system with cameras and motion sensors. Jeffrey had helped me create ironclad legal protections, a proper will, medical directives, and a legitimate power of attorney designating Grace as my representative should I ever become unable to manage my affairs. Most significantly, I'd added Grace as a co-owner of the house with right of survivorship. Not because I expect to need your help, I explained when the paperwork was signed, but because I trust you completely. If Bethany taught me anything, it's to formalize the important relationships in my life. My relationship with Michael remained complicated. After the trial, he entered intensive therapy to understand how he'd been manipulated and why he'd been vulnerable to Bethany's influence. He moved to an apartment across town and initially maintained his distance, overcome with shame for his role in what had happened. Our reconciliation began with letters, actual handwritten letters that allowed us to express feelings too raw for face-to-face conversation. I wrote about my hurt and betrayal, but also my enduring love. He wrote about his remorse and his journey to understand how he'd lost himself so completely. "I keep thinking about Dad," he wrote in one letter. "How disappointed he would be in me, how I failed to protect you the way he always did." "Your father understood that people make mistakes," I replied. "What mattered to him was how you responded afterward, whether you took responsibility and worked to make things right." Slowly, cautiously, we began rebuilding trust through actions, not just words. Michael helped with house maintenance but respected my boundaries about financial matters. We attended family therapy sessions that helped us communicate more honestly. The therapist helped me understand that while I could forgive Michael, forgiveness didn't mean pretending the betrayal never happened or immediately returning to our previous relationship. "Trust is earned back in small deposits," she explained. "Each kept promise, each honest conversation, each time he respects your boundaries. These are deposits in the trust account that was emptied." Outside our family drama, I found purpose in helping others avoid similar situations. Detective Morales invited me to speak at senior centers about recognizing the warning signs of elder fraud. I started a support group for victims of family financial exploitation, creating a safe space to process the unique pain of being betrayed by loved ones. Michael, too, found purpose in advocacy. Using his accounting skills, he volunteered with a nonprofit that helped investigate financial fraud against seniors. "I know exactly what to look for," he explained. "I watched Bethany do it step by step." In a surprising development 6 months after the trial, Michael met Catherine, a kindergarten teacher whose classroom was across the hall from his therapy office. Their relationship progressed at a healthy, measured pace. Unlike Bethany, Catherine encouraged Michael to maintain his relationship with me and even joined our family therapy sessions occasionally to understand our history and ongoing healing process. "I want to do things right this time," Michael told me when he introduced us. "No rushing, no secrets, no coming between family." The house that Bethany had coveted continued to be my sanctuary, but I made practical modifications for aging in place. A first-floor master bedroom conversion, grab bars in strategic locations, lever door handles instead of knobs. Not because I was incapable, but because Robert had taught me the value of planning ahead. Through it all, I gained wisdom I never wanted, but now value deeply. I learned the importance of trusting my instincts when something feels wrong, even when it involves people I love. I discovered the critical nature of proper legal protections for seniors, regardless of family relationships. Most painfully, I recognized that sometimes those closest to us can be manipulated into causing harm. But I also learned about resilience, both my own and that of the relationships that truly matter. I discovered that community can become family when biological family falters. I found that purpose can emerge from pain, using my experience to help others navigate similar situations. In quiet moments, I still grieve for what was lost. The innocent trust I once had in Michael. The relationship we might have had if Bethany had never entered our lives. The sense of absolute safety I once felt in my home. Yet there have been unexpected gains too. A deeper relationship with Grace and other friends who stood by me without hesitation. A new appreciation for my own strength and capability. A more honest adult relationship with Michael that, while still healing, has the potential to be stronger for having been tested. Robert always told me, "A house is just boards and nails, Joe. It's the love inside that makes it a home." Bethany could never have stolen that, no matter what papers I signed. If you're facing elder fraud or family exploitation, please know you're not alone. Trust your instincts, document everything, and reach out for help immediately. Have you or someone you love experienced financial manipulation by family members? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else recognize the warning signs. Please like this video if you found it helpful, subscribe for more real-life stories, and share with anyone who might benefit from these hard-earned lessons. Together we can protect our most vulnerable community members from those who would exploit them. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, it's never too late to stand up for yourself and reclaim your power.